Welcome to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. Please subscribe to me on patreon.com/Mick Meow. You can also find the Conservative Continuum on Facebook and on Rumble. So, today we have a curious cat show for you. We are going to be talking with the county chair of Garvin County, Troy Fullerton. And we are going to be discussing with him the state committee meetings on May the 21st of this past year, August 27th, this past Saturday. We're going to be talking to him about a resolution that was proposed and the results of that. So grab your milk and your kitty treats and let's get ready to engage. It is time for us to get on to the caterwaul. So, let's get to it. Now, Dax the kitten and I don't make accusations. However, we do give background information. There are perceived election integrity, proxy, and credentialing irregularities that need to be looked at and addressed concerning the state committee meeting on May 21st of 2022. That was the meeting when our current state GOP chair, A.J. Ferrati, was elected. A resolution was submitted by a group of county chairs, vice chairs, and witnesses to investigate these irregularities. That resolution was to be presented on August 27th of 2022. The video clips that you are going to see throughout this show come from that state committee meeting. It shows some of the interaction that occurred after the current GOP state chair declared that he created a proxy policy committee and assigned the members himself, and that the resolution that was submitted was moot. It also shows his response to discussing the current FEC, which is Federal Election Commission audit and report. It also shows a pattern of behavior that could be considered questionable. Thank you for watching, and please welcome with me after the break, County Chair of Garvin County, Troy Fullerton. Welcome to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. Please subscribe to me on patreon.com/Mick Meow. I also want to say thank you to our sponsors, Charles Defuria, Carolyn Montgomery, the Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee, and Mariam Daly for Senate. So today we have a fabulous guest with us. We have the County Chair of Garvin County. This is Troy Fullerton. Thank you so much for being with me today, sir.
Absolutely.
We are talking today about the state GOP, their committee meetings that were on May the 21st, a resolution that was formed, and then the state committee meeting that occurred just this past Saturday,
yes,
on August 27th. So, Troy, I wanted to kind of ask you, because many people are concerned. They're concerned about the status of our state and the status of our country altogether. They're concerned about the Republican Party. And they really have concerns about the GOP in itself in our state. So with regards to transparency and information, we are going to talk about the proxies and the credentialing and everything that goes on with the state committee meetings. So I want you to just kind of, before we get into the meat and potatoes of it, since we're going to be talking about proxies and credentialing, could you just give us a brief synopsis of the use of proxies and credentialing that is according to the GOP party rules and how it works?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Now, one problem that I have is I don't want to get ahead of myself here, because part of what's going on here is the system as we have it right now is so nebulous. And it can change from administration to administration to administration. Mm-hmm. This is part of our problem. That the part of the problem is the rules themselves are so non-specific, so vague about some things, that this can take different forms at different times. Now, credentialing, the way it is supposed to work, is that only people who are on the Oklahoma GOP State Committee are supposed to be able to come and vote. So that's the way it goes. It's your state committee members, county chairs, vice chairs, the past chairman, the current chairman, your legislative members. These people are supposed to be on the state committee per state party rules, and they're supposed to be able to come and vote. Now, according to Robert's Rules of Order, they strongly recommend against any deliberative body even allowing proxies at all. Yeah. However, somehow it's been shoehorned in that we allow proxies for our state committee. A lot of people question that, but then we can understand that we've got people that live all over the state.
Yes.
That come, and so now, but then that's also a double-edged sword, because we can say, well, if people who had to get up at the crack of dawn and drive halfway across the state to be able to sit there and listen to what people have to say, listen to people make their case. If they had to do that, then is it fair that somebody could just say, oh, I'm not going to show up, you carry my proxy for me? And so that's one major problem that we have. But the proxies are in place to allow people who can't make it to the meeting to have somebody else cast a vote for them.
Gotcha.
Now, there is nothing in place that says that they have to cast that proxy a certain way. So an individual could say, well, I'll let you have my proxy, but I want you to vote for so-and-so. You may honor that, you may not. Nobody would ever be the wiser. And see, that's part of the problem as well. But I think the biggest problem that people have is, how do we... Okay, I live my life by the Word of God. I try to. Yes. The Word of God says, provide things honest in the sight of all men.
Yes.
The Word of God says also, avoid the very appearance of evil. Well, while you're busy avoiding the appearance of evil, you're avoiding evil. You may not be an unscrupulous person, so the rules weren't really written for you. But when you follow the rules and somebody else has to follow the rules, then that may keep somebody else, that may cut down on somebody cheating or exploiting things. And so that's why they're in place in the first place. The problem is, our rules right now are so vague. The way that they're written, they can be interpreted in different ways, and there really isn't anything in place to keep loopholes from being exploited. But to answer your question, proxies, the proxy system is in place to allow people who aren't going to attend the meeting, who could attend the meeting, to still have a vote cast in their name.
Gotcha. And it sounds like then, since it changes from administration to administration, which is good information to know, that there's not a set guideline, there's not a set form, there's not a set structure. In other words, you can say, I'm the Garvin County Chair and I give Mick Meow in Garvin County my proxy, and you can write it on a sheet of paper.
Well, if you were eligible to carry my proxy, there really isn't anything to say that I couldn't get an old proxy form from a previous meeting and just print it off, sign my name, and hand it over to you. There's nothing in place to say that.
Gotcha. Okay. With that, and in all transparency, I was in the meeting on May the 21st. So let's move into May 21st.
Sure.
We've kind of got our baseline going here. So I witnessed several things while I was there. Examples, I had people, I was working, volunteering, doing the proxy table. I had people come up to me and say, well, I am not going to be able to turn in my proxies right now because I'm waiting on this particular committee person to bring me a proxy. When they were at the table, or they said, I've checked in, they checked in as themselves, but now I have these 2 to 3 proxies because this certain committee member brought them to me, and now I'm going to carry these proxies. I also had people who were working in the credentialing area saying that they were being rushed through. There were so many proxies. There was probably 150 to 200 of them, somewhere around there. There was a lot. And they were being rushed through in the essence of getting through and getting to the meeting and being able to get things done on time. So what happened is that left me feeling like, there was some certain irregularities that were going on in this meeting. So that's what I saw. And even though it may not be, I'm not being accusatory, but it certainly looked odd, raised questions. So would you be able to tell us a little bit about what you saw on May the 21st?
Sure, I'd be glad to. We all went there for the purpose of choosing an interim state chair.
Yes.
That's what we were there for, for the meeting. That was the meat of it. That was the main thing that we were there for. And I was none the wiser. But I didn't know that anything was amiss or anything was going on. But we went in, and when all of the votes were taken, and by the way, just as an aside, I had brand new state committee people from my county there. Want them to have a good impression of our state committee, They were brand new. And so they're there, and we got through everything, and 271 credentialed votes were possible, counting the people in attendance and counting the proxies that had been counted.
Yes.
When all of the voting was done, 292 people had voted, either by proxy or by being present to vote. So we had nearly 24 overvotes.
Wow.
Obviously, on the surface, something's wrong.
Yes.
Not saying anybody cheated, don't know what's going on, but I'm like, what is this? What's going on here? So I went up to the vice chairman at the time, or he's still the vice chairman, and I asked, well, what's going on here? And he told me, I don't know, but he told me that he would have it audited. He said he was going to have this audited.
Yes. Gotcha.
So I took him at his word.
Yes.
So, all right, so he was going to have it audited. I let it go with that, and I went back and talked to my county.
Yes.
And when I talked to my county, I said, look, I'm not going to let this go.
Yes.
We're going to find out what's going on, but I am getting a little ahead of myself. Let me back up to that day. So that's what happened, and then that evening, somebody sent me a picture that they had taken that somebody had brought a printer, and it had a printer set up in the sanctuary, because it was at a church,
Yes.
past the area where people would check in. Then I started hearing things about people would check in, then come back later on and say, oh, and by the way, I've got these proxies now all of a sudden.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, what? And then I started hearing people who were checking in the proxies saying that they were coerced or rushed, or pressured. I even heard about one case where somebody said, well, they just came and took a bunch of proxies and said, well, yeah, I know who these people are. Push these people through.
I am so appreciative of this information. The kitty is telling us, though, that we need to take a break.
Yes, ma'am.
We are going to come back and we are going to talk more about this in just a minute. Don't go away. Come right back.
We're going to discuss a request that I received a few weeks ago at the state party. Prior to the deadline, I received a request for a resolution to A, hold a meeting, and B, talk about reviewing proxies. I determined at that point with my staff and my legal counsel that was moot because A, I could go ahead and have that, we already had a meeting scheduled, and B, that we're here and we can have a discussion now. So I rendered that resolution moot for that reason. But I think it's important to have a discussion about that. But more importantly, let me backtrack a little bit. I'm appointing a proxy review committee because it's been brought as a concern. And I'll go into that committee a little bit further, but in your packet is a document that was sent to me earlier this week. I don't know where this document came from. I know it's been circulating around a number of you, but it includes the letter that I received at the state party. It was sent to me by certified mail by Mr. Fullerton, and it was signed by a number of others as well.
Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. I want to say thank you really quick to our sponsors, Mariam Daly running for Senate, Charles Defuria, Carolyn Montgomery, and OPAC, the Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee. I also want to say thank you to our audience. Hello. Thank you for being with us, Troy.
Sure.
So we just watched a little bit of clip from the meeting, but before you got to the meeting, or before we got to the meeting, because in all transparency I was there was a resolution. A group of concerned chair people came together, chairs, vice chairs, concerned volunteers, and there was a resolution that was put together that was presented at this meeting. Are you able to tell us a little bit about that resolution? Tell us a little bit about what it was and what you hope to accomplish.
Sure. Well, after that meeting and after the things that I told you about, I did a little more digging. I talked to representatives who'd been at the Capitol, and I'd heard that, and there again, I'm not making an accusation. I'm saying these are things that need to be looked into.
Yes.
Because I really, I'm not saying that anybody, tried to cheat, but I do think that people, there comes a time when you've got to decide what is going to be acceptable and what is not. And what these representatives I talked to gave me to understand was that somebody was down at the Capitol going around and collecting proxies from the legislators who did not plan to attend. Yes. Now, I've heard different things about this. There again, I think it needs to be looked into. But I've heard everything from one legislator simply called an individual and said, we got proxies, to basically we were all lined up and told to hand over a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. Usually I think with most things the truth is somewhere in the middle, but it sounds an awful lot like proxy harvesting to me. If you're going down there and just, well, here, give us a piece of paper, we'll find someone to carry your proxy for you. Or something, if that's the case, if that's what it amounts to, well, we need to know that, but I didn't know any of this. Then I saw a report that had been drawn up by the current, communications director at the time, who did a breakdown of all of the irregularities that he found.
Yes.
Okay, and then later on, I saw actual examples of what he was looking at. So when I'm looking at all of this, I'm thinking, okay, obviously we've got something that has to be investigated. We've got something, I'm not trying to skewer anybody, but something's wrong. Well, on the surface, something's wrong. We've got the overvotes. We've got the people who are at the table saying, I was coerced, we were rushed, this is rushed through. And then we've got, all of these questionable things going on. And I'm hearing about it from different sources. And then one county chair I spoke to said that he conscientiously tried to get a hold of the legislators in his district to make sure whether or not they had proxies. And he was told, oh, well, so-and-so already picked mine up.
Wow.
And, here he's the county chair.
Right.
And so, it leaves you thinking, what on earth is going on? We obviously have a problem. These things need to be looked into.
Yes.
Like I said, I went back and I talked to my county, my state, my state committee man, my state committee woman, people
Yes.
who were there. My wife is my vice chair. Talked to my whole group about it. We decided, you know what, my integrity's on the line. If I don't want to make trouble. I'm not naturally a troublemaker.
Yeah.
But my integrity's on the line if I just let this blow past. And then I found out that this is same song, second verse.
Yes.
Something like 10 years ago, a very similar situation occurred where there was an election for who's going to be chair.
Yes.
There was a stack of proxies and there was a bunch of overvotes. And I'm like, okay, something's the matter here. It's got to be fixed.
Yes.
Now, I heard all kinds of, how people can be.
Yes.
I heard a lot of very judgmental things, and I wanted to put the brakes on it. And I wanted to be like, this has got to be looked into. We can't make accusations. We've got to see what's happening. So the resolution called for two things.
Yes.
To set up an impartial committee.
Yes.
I would be on it, and two other county chairs would be on it because we were the ones who were concerned.
Yes.
It would be sponsored by my county, Garvin County, GOP, and then several other chairs and one vice chair signed on to it as well because we have a problem. It needs to be fixed, and we sent a resolution. That was the first part of it. We wanted this to be investigated to pinpoint what happened.
Yes.
And then we wanted to be able to make recommendations to the state committee as to what we ought to do about proxies and credentialing moving forward to see to it that it never happens again. Now, my question is, who can be opposed to that?
Right.
We have a problem. We need to find out what the problem is, and then we need to address it. We need to fix it. So I sent that by certified mail to everybody on the central committee, and I sent one to the OKGOP headquarters by certified mail to boot, and I put it with a cover letter. And I very carefully worded the cover letter to say, look, people are on edge right now. We just came through the 2020 election and January 6th and all of this. People are, 2,000 mules came out.
Right.
People are on edge about voter fraud and that kind of thing. And so they're already on edge about what's going on in our party. They want to know. And this doesn't look good, but they were saying, oh, so-and-so needs to be removed from their position, and there need to be reprisals. I put right in the letter, I said, look, we're not asking for the election to be redone.
Yes.
I'm not asking for AJ Ferrati to be removed.
Yes.
We're not asking for any reprisals. We just want to find out what happened so we can put measures in place to fix it.
Right.
That's what I said. That's what I put out.
Yes.
Now,
And it sounds like there were 9 chairs, because I was also an observer of that resolution, full transparency. Sounds like there were 9 chairs and vice chairs who also signed on with that. So it wasn't just Garvin County and maybe a few others. There were several other chairs and vice chairs.
I can't attest to exactly how many just sitting here, how many people actually lent their signature to it.
Yes.
But there was one vice chair, there were several county chairs, and then my county, and so that's who was there.
Excellent.
So I think 9 people altogether.
Yes, I think because I saw a copy of the resolution, it looked like there was 9 altogether. Kitty is up again. Kitty is awake again. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. This is a good place to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk more about the resolution and the meeting on August the 27th. Don't go away.
I do think that it's important to address concerns. I think a lot of these are erroneous, but let's get these all figured out. And so this is what I've done. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to appoint a committee by my own action.
Mr. Chairman, Kenny Tapp, Cimarron County. I would move this resolution on for the state committee meeting that was sent to you, that everybody has copies today.
Mr. Taft, that your motion is out of order because it was deemed moved before the meeting. So we will move on now. We will now have the National Committee Woman report from Madam Chair.
Not done.
Mr. Taft, I ask you to stand down or I will ask you to leave.
I feel the ruling of the chair that
It is
requires
refuted.
Overruled.
Ma'am, come on up.
a majority vote.
Ma'am, come on up. It's time for your report.
No, we overruled the chair. We called for division. We overruled the chair.
There's no election.
Why is there no vote?
Because it wasn't noticed.
Where's your ruler, AJ?
I feel the ruling of the chair.
The ruler that you said that you were a nun. Think of me as the nun with the ruler.
I've been the attorney
Remember
for
that
13
comment
years.
that you deleted?
It's not noticed for a vote. It can't be
You
voted.
are out of order.
That's only because you were making sure we don't get a chance.
Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. Please subscribe to us on patreon.com/Mick Meow. We are here with County Chair, Garvin County, Troy Fullerton, and we are talking about election integrity, and we are talking about the state committee meetings that went on May 21st and then August 27th. So we just were talking about the resolution. Part of the resolution and the cover letter that you thought, while I know we're not accusing, we are trying to look at these issues, I thought was very succinct in what you had said. And I want to read it. It said that you had concerns of a broken process and election integrity. You cite an obvious breakdown in our system that resulted in a larger number of votes being taken than credentialed possible votes. Serious allegations of misuse or mishandling of proxies and the lack of a promised audit to ascertain where this breakdown occurred, and that alarming questions are being deliberately questioned throughout the state regarding the integrity of our procedures. So I thought that was a fabulous way to put it. There wasn't anybody pointing fingers. You were simply asking for this committee. So tell us a little bit more from your perspective. You brought this resolution. What did you anticipate would happen? What did you envision? What was the thought?
Well, okay. My thinking was this was a way for us to try to take control of the situation before it turned ugly. Mm-hmm. That we could say, okay, look, let's look in and find what happened and let's fix it. Where we weren't going to go in and demand that anybody do anything, but we wanted to be able to have an impartial group make recommendations to the state party that they would vote on about how we were going to handle proxies moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I started going around and talking to many different people. Some said we shouldn't have proxies at all. Others said if we're going to have proxies, they should be notarized. There were all kinds of different ideas, and I thought, okay, this is something we need to work through. And so what I envisioned was if we could get this resolution up here, everybody I talked to, no matter whom they voted for chair, it made absolutely no difference. Everybody could see we had a problem and it needed to be addressed and it needed to be fixed.
Yes.
I didn't have any resistance whatsoever from any segment of the party. But so that's where I moved. That's where I was going forward with. I was thinking, let's have an investigation. Let's put something in place to fix it. Non-threatening.
Yes.
I couldn't see how anybody could have a problem with that. I really couldn't. So after that, my idea was that we would put this out there, and then several days, a few days, less than a week before the actual meeting, I would release my letter and my cover letter to the state committee,
Yes.
so that they could know what was going on.
Yes.
That was all I planned to do.
Yes.
So I already had the MailChimp all set up. We had it all set up. We had it all ready to go. We had a date in mind when we were going to do it. I was not the only one, however, working on this. And so what happened was, a couple of days before I was going to release that, some other individuals, and I don't think they had any nefarious intentions. I really don't. Just a different avenue, a different way to go. They released not only my letter, my cover letter and my resolution, but they also sent out that report along with those examples. Now the problem with that was, though that report had never been investigated, it was just a summary report telling us what we needed to look into. All right, so when people got that, invariably there are going to be people on that list, because it, unfortunately, it had the name of the person who lost the election. As he was the one who wrote that report initially, so people automatically assume sour grapes if they don't know any better. The other thing was, it was calling people out by name, saying that this person's proxy was invalid, this for whatever reason. Now there again, this was just stuff that needed to be looked into.
Sure.
We didn't know for sure anything, right?
Right.
But this got sent out to everybody. You know how people are. They looked at this, they saw their friends' names on it, people's names on it. I started getting texts. I started hearing from people who were so offended, so scandalized by it, because they were feeling like they were being called out unjustly. And so when I went to the meeting, I was a nervous wreck, because I knew that a lot of people were ticked off. And so I went in and I spent that morning going around trying to put out fires, trying to explain that, okay, look, we're not saying, these are not accusations. They're simply anomalies that need to be looked into. Sure. But by then, people were already linking my resolution with that letter. And so what AJ Ferrati and his people did was, they took that whole packet and put it in everybody's folder and passed it out to the whole state committee, apparently as a way to lampoon it, or as a way to say, look, this stuff is in here and it's not true. And I knew what was going to happen. I knew everybody was going to focus on that rather than on the resolution, and that's what they did.
So it sounds to me like there was a way for AJ to be able to maybe undercut the committee or undercut the resolution. Is that what you're thinking is happening?
What I'm thinking is, he never intended to put my resolution up for a vote. He flatly never intended to. He did intend, however, to put up his own committee in place.
Yes.
I'm on the committee.
Uh-huh.
Somebody else who was a part of our group is on the committee.
Yes.
I can't complain about that. At least we got something.
Okay.
However, what I think was going on here was, by focusing attention on the report that really should never have gone out in the first place, by focusing attention on that, then he could, deflect from what the resolution and the cover letter said. He could get people I'm just saying people got so agitated about that they lost sight of the other. And so it's sort of like a red herring.
Gotcha. Well, we're going to come back. I want to really focus on what happened on August 22nd, because, that's kind of the crux of the issue there.
Yes.
So we're going to take care of the kitty, and then we're going to come back and we're going to focus on what happened during the meeting on August 27th.
I within my rights. I appeal the ruling of the chair. I appeal the ruling of the chair. We get a majority vote.
A second.
Yes.
I appeal as well. We appeal.
I as well.
You're out of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Your request is out of order. It was not noticed for a vote. It is not on the ballot. We will move on at this point. It was not noticed for a vote because it was deemed moved.
You deemed it moot. We don't. We overrule that.
I'm not a
We're
parliamentarian.
appealing it.
Okay,
We're appealing
hang on, let me
it.
say
Sorry,
something.
we're appealing it.
I'm not-
No, we're appealing it.
Would you please let me speak? I'm gonna help you. No, you need to listen to what I have to say,
Okay,
please.
I listen, but if it's not approving our resolution, it's not gonna
Guys, what I'm trying to tell you is help you and ask for a parliamentary rule, because it's my understanding, and I did not ask the chairman this, I'm bringing it directly to you. It's my understanding that the body can add something to the agenda with a 2/3 vote. Am I correct on that to the parliamentarians?
Let's vote.
No, I know it's a 2/3 vote. You can add something to an agenda with a 2/3 vote, so I'm trying to help you, ma'am. Y'all make this a thing, you get a 2/3 vote, you can add it to the agenda. Now, that's my thought. I'm not an expert on this.
The agenda, I call for a vote.
We have a motion then on the floor, appeal the ruling of the chair under Robert's rules requires a majority vote. And so that's what we have right here, is appeal the ruling of the chair. And it's worked out.
And the ruling that you're questioning, I'm just helping for clarification, guys. The ruling that you're questioning is the rule that this resolution is moot? Is that the rule? Be specific and let us know what rule that you're challenging.
Yes.
What ruling, excuse me, that you're challenging.
I'm appealing on the decision not to hear this resolution. We made a motion, you heard. The resolution called for a state committee meeting. And it was sent to the chairman in a timely manner.
We can call for a motion to add the resolution to the agenda.
If I receive a motion to add it to the agenda, which requires a 2/3 vote, more power to you.
I made a motion.
You haven't stated your name or county for
Andrew
record.
Million from Wagner County.
You have it. Is there a second to your motion?
I second the motion, Charity Lynch with Craig County.
It will take 129 votes in the affirmative.
Clarification on exactly what they're asking to do.
They are asking to add a vote so, let me be
Add the
clear.
resolution to the
Hold on,
agenda.
hold on.
It's my motion.
I understand. I have appointed a committee on proxy analysis on this, okay? They are asking to add the resolution to be voted on so that we would have a duplicative committee doing this analysis as well. Now,
Mr. Chairman.
we will have, it requires, we have 195 people that are here to vote according to credentials. It will take 129 votes to pass the motion from Mr. Vermillion. And this is not a debatable vote. So, Mr. Tapp, shut up and sit down.
You don't come to us like that. You want to be talked to like that? You are not the none with the ruler.
I'm trying to get you a chance to vote.
Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. I would like to say thank you to our sponsors, Carolyn Montgomery, Charles Defuria, the Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee, and OTU Media. We are here with Garvin County Chair Troy Fullerton, and we are talking about the meeting on August 27th. So we're to that point. We're in the meeting on August 27th. Full transparency, I was there. So GOP State Chairman Ferrati led the state committee. On the agenda, there was a discussion to form a proxy policy committee. And the resolution was made moot because Chairman Ferrati announced that he had already created a committee. He had already assigned members himself, and it sparked quite a bit of controversy. So you were concerned going into the meeting because he wasn't, your words, he wasn't going to go forward with the resolution. He was using whatever he could as a red herring to kind of evaded. Am I correct in that?
Well, that's what I felt like. I felt like, because I mean that letter, that packet, I should say, that had the report and the examples went out like 2 days before mine was supposed to go out. So it was like just within a week of the meeting. So there had to be a last minute decision to print all of that up and include the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you'll notice that he didn't even know where it came from by
Right.
his own words. So yes, I considered that a red herring, because that way people could deflect their energy from the meat of the resolution
Yeah.
and my cover letter to, oh my goodness, my friend's listed there and I know good and well that they did everything right, that kind of thing. And so, and furthermore, this was sour grapes and, all of that. So that's what I feel like he did. I felt like he took advantage of that in order to, because our committee that we were going to put together would have had 10 people on it. 3 of us were chairs, but then the executive committee could choose several. The state committee could choose several, and the whole idea was to have it be completely impartial. There would have been deadlines in place when this investigation had to be done, and when the recommendations had to be made.
Yes.
And there again, the idea, they could choose their own chairperson. It wouldn't have been a thing of where you had one person. We wanted it to be transparent. We wanted the whole state committee to feel comfortable with it.
Yes.
Okay, so when he instead hand selects a smaller committee and puts a person in place to be chair, I'm glad we got that.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I'm glad we at least got that. I hope something good comes of it. I hope we're able to do the things that we needed to do.
Yes.
If we can't, we'll be back to fight another day.
Yeah.
However, I think it would have been so much better if we could have done what we had proposed in the interest of nobody's private interests would have been represented. It would have all been very impartial.
Gotcha. So, it sounds to me like you didn't anticipate that this would happen.
That's right.
That he would put this proxy policy committee together and that he would assign his own people to it. It also sounds like you were maybe a bit concerned about what went on with that meeting as well. What do you see happened in that meeting?
Well, let's just, Mr. Ferrati set up the meeting, and there was nothing wrong with the meeting itself as far as like having a senator up there to talk to everybody. And, that was all very good, but we'll notice right away that there were no microphones set up.
Yeah.
He didn't intend for there to be any discussion. And, okay, Mr. Tapp, okay, I'm glad that he challenged the ruling of the chair.
I am too.
I'm glad he did. However, even after he finally conceded and said, okay, we'll have a vote. If you get 2/3, you'll win. You can hear Mr. Tapp still badgering. Still, I appeal the ruling of the chair. I appeal the ruling of the chair. Doing that. Finally, AJ turned around, Mr. Tapp, sit down and shut up. All right, he shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I'll admit he shouldn't have done that. Yeah. But anybody can get angry and maybe say things they regret later. I'm not as concerned about that as I am about the fact that he was going to sidestep him in the first place. This is a member of the state committee. He had a right to stand up and challenge the ruling of the chair, and you don't just pretend he didn't speak and bring up your next speaker.
Right.
Now Mr. Ferrati is a parliamentarian. He knows this. And this is what concerns me. This is what concerns me more than the outburst. What concerns me is, look, it's not all your decision. We are the state committee. According to the state party rules, the state committee is the supreme ruling body for the Republicans in the state. We were elected to these positions.
I was very concerned being in the meeting that there was, it said on there on the agenda, a discussion. There was no discussion. There was, I agree with you in the sense that there was no microphones, there was no intention to discuss. It was set up in a situation where he was going to do what he was going to do and then move forward in the process. And I don't know that and I'm glad that Mr. Tapp stood up and said, listen, I object to this, I appeal this. One of the things that was concerning was that there was such a lack of discussion, and it was very orchestrated out. It seemed very streamlined to me to be like, okay, I've done this, and now you just be quiet. Just, don't say anything. You be happy with what I've done.
Let's take him at his own words.
Okay.
Mr. Ferrati said that he was going to rule my resolution moot because he'd already called a meeting and we can have a discussion right here.
Yes.
No. You cannot have a meaty discussion where you really get everything out and look at it and talk about what happened and who saw what where with all of these people in the room. You have to have a committee that's going to sit down, call people in, discuss these things. What did you see?
Yes.
What did you experience? What were you thinking? What was going on? And to really arrive at what happened. And that's all we want to know is what happened. And I'm still mystified as to how that's threatening to anybody.
Yeah, I have to wholeheartedly agree with you. I didn't see it as threatening. I saw the resolution. I thought the resolution was very well lined out. The cover letter was very succinct and very, unthreatening. But I was very almost taken aback by what I saw from, and while I guess he can say, I'll put this in place, I am the leader, it came across very heavy-handed. This is what I'm going to do, and there will be no question to it. That is my humble opinion. I'm not trying to be hateful or rude. That's what I perceive.
Sure.
We're going to take a quick break. That kitty needs one more set of treats, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk more. And we're going to kind of get into a little bit about a talk of the FEC audit.
What gives you the authority to deem the resolution?
It's me.
I'm the chairman, and my legal counsel has reviewed it as well. We've gone through it.
What do you?
It called for two things. It called for a meeting, and it called for a discussion of a proxy review. We're doing both on those, so it was moot to actually
There was
bring it
no
forward.
discussion.
There was no discussion.
There was no discussion.
My understanding is that his objection was your decision, be it under counsel, that it is a moot point. Because if it's not moot, then we added it plenty of time. We don't need to add it to, we sent in the resolution with plenty of time for this to be considered. I'm not trying to be adversarial, but the objection was that decision, and therefore, since it was moved that we appeal the ruling of the chair, then it's a majority vote to decide whether that motion succeeds. And if it does, then we can consider this resolution without a supermajority because it was already presented to you in time. So
Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. I want to thank all of our sponsors who sponsor us: Carolyn Montgomery, Charles Defuria, Mariam, Daly for Senate, and the Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee. And I want to ask you to subscribe to us at patreon.com /McMeow. Troy, we were in the middle of talking about the August 27th meeting. So the August 27th meeting happened. I think we're both in agreement that there was definitely a push to just sort of move forward. We saw from the clip there was Kevin Farmer, who is the county chair from Craig County, stood up. You know, he talked about how it didn't need a supermajority. That was taken down. The vote didn't pass. They moved forward in the meeting, and the proxy policy committee stood. And the people who were put on it, AJ appointed, including you, and then one other person who was on the resolution committee. So I want to ask you a couple things. I want to ask you, what do you see happening now with this committee?
Well, I want to be optimistic because, you know, we have 5 people, and so one of them was on the committee with me, you know, for their original resolution.
Yes.
And so, you know, and wanting this to go forward. And I want to be optimistic that we can get together and that we can really get everything out and look at it and still have the same net effect. I'm not easily intimidated. You know, they're not going to go in there and bulldoze over me. I don't think that well, I know of at least one other person on there that I don't think they're going to bulldoze over her either.
Right.
And I don't have any reason to believe that Mr. Curry, who was put in to chair that, I don't have any reason at this point to believe that he would have any untoward motives or anything. I want to believe that we'll get everything accomplished that we need to get accomplished this way. Once again, I cannot imagine how anybody could be opposed to what we're doing. And you'll notice that Mr. Ferrati, even when, you know, maybe at an unguarded moment, he said that we would analyze the proxy procedure. Yeah. So that's what I want to happen. Now, what I don't want to happen is we just get in there and just basically try to narrow the scope so much that we're ineffective, you know, put a Band-Aid on a few things, and then say, we all did a good job. I'm not going to accept that. Yeah. I mean, we've got something broken that needed to be fixed a long time ago. It needs to be fixed now. Yes. And so that's how I feel about it.
Fabulous. I'm glad to hear that. And I know just from working with you a little bit, I don't think they will bulldoze over you, you know, and I don't think that there's at least one other person in that committee who will be bulldozed over as well. What goals do you have for this committee?
I want to find out what is the matter, and I want to plug holes, because I think that our rules are so vague. I am looking at what other states do with their proxy rules. Yes. For example, in Arizona, when a proxy is submitted, it has to either be notarized or the signature has to be witnessed by 2 people. So if it's too much trouble to go get a notary stamp on it, then you can have 2 other people witness it. Sure, people could still find a way to cheat if they wanted to, but at least it cuts down on it. It cuts down on it. I think that would keep people honest. I think that it should be a thing of where, if we're going to have proxies at all,
yes,
I believe that it should be a thing of where you sign your proxy over to a specific individual.
Yes.
Your name is on it, and our rules already say there has to be a hard copy of the proxy. Mm. Now, the way that this last process was set up, there was a number on every proxy form. You wouldn't have known it when you got it, but there was a number on it that would make it correspond to the person who gave it.
Yes.
Now, a system was set up because if that had simply been followed, we could see this proxy came from that person. We'd be able to see that. But because the rules don't say that we had to follow that, we had people bringing in old proxy forms, a proxy form where they'd whited out the name and put another one. Just, there are problems here.
Yes.
There are problems here. I think we need to tighten it down and say, this is the procedure we're going to follow for credentialing, as well as for proxies. We need to examine that, figure out what would work, put it out there and insist that it be followed, and that's not going to be something that should change from administration to administration to administration. It should be a thing of where only by an act of the state committee does it get changed.
Excellent. I like that. Can you tell us also, how would you ensure that there's going to be reform or restructuring? I mean, I know they're not going to run roughshod over you, but how could you ensure that?
Well, honestly, because it is a committee, and I don't know how everybody's going to respond to this. My thing is simply going to be to bring out the evidence and say, this is what we have to deal with. Some things don't even need an investigation. The fact that we had nearly 24 overvotes doesn't need an investigation. It stands on its own merit. There's a problem. The fact that we have people who were supposed to be vetting these proxies that are saying we were coerced, we were, walked past, we were pressured, that we don't need an investigation to see if it happened. We've already got 2 or 3 witnesses. We already got people saying, yes, that happened to us.
Yes.
We've got to listen to that. We've got to listen to that. Simply bringing in the rules and saying, look how vague this is. If I simply wrote on a piece of paper, I want so-and-so to carry my proxy, where does it say in the rules I can't do that?
Yes.
And perhaps that needs to be fixed, but beyond, more than anything else, the rules are ambiguous the way they're written.
Yes.
The way that proxies are supposed to be done, essentially, just to boil it down essentially, if I'm going to give somebody my proxy, it needs to be somebody who could have voted for me as my county, to be their county chair, voted for me to be, to be their state committee person. If I'm going to carry a proxy for somebody who's in the legislature, then it needs to be somebody that I could have voted for. Yes. However, that graph or that chart that is in there, it says to or from on it, which makes it terribly vague and ambiguous, could be taken more than one way. Now, historically speaking, whenever there's a legal discrepancy between a graphic and what's in writing,
yes,
you go by what's in writing.
Yes.
However, there again, that needs to be revised. It's sloppy. It needs to be redone. So to answer your question, I'm going to push these things. I'm going to say, look, this is what's going on. We can't just ignore it.
Yes.
We're here. We've got a job to do. We can't just skip this. These things need to be rewritten. They need to be reconsidered, and we need to put something in place that will at least minimize the possibility of cheating.
Before we go on a break, because the kitty's crying, I want you to answer really quickly. How do we ensure that Oklahoma's obtain some sort of briefing or information regarding the progress of this committee?
I believe that we owe it to the state committee to publish at least a synopsis of our findings and what our recommendations are. That needs to be put on the agenda then for a vote to say, are we going to ratify? Are we going to ratify these new rules? This needs to be put in place, and it should not be a thing of where we come up with this and we say, the state committee says we're ratifying this, and then a few months later they come back and say, oh, well, the central committee overruled that. No. According to the rules, the state committee is in charge of the party, and that's the way it needs to be.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're going to take one more quick break. We have another clip of the video, and then we're going to talk a little bit more with Troy. All right, Kitty, we're coming.
But it is not on the agenda, and to be added to the agenda, it has to be by 2/3 vote, which we're going to do now.
On the agenda.
It
says it.
It says discussion, it does not say there's a vote. And Pollard registered 33 votes. The Vice Chair, Shane Jemison, registered 36 votes.
And I don't know, Shane, did you get my vote?
That is insufficient to add this to the agenda. I don't believe Mr. Tapp used that decorum. Many of us didn't use that decorum, but I in particular want to apologize to each and every one of you. So I hope you'll accept that apology.
Daly Vice Chair, Oklahoma County. So we had gotten an FEC audit update. You and I had had a conversation, and I know that because you don't have a treasurer right now, we weren't expecting a lot, but will we be able to hear an update with regards to where we were? Because it was getting cleaned up, and you're asking us to invest, and we want to make sure that that is going to be closed out and will be kept up to date. That would be helpful to know. Thank you.
So let me provide you a little bit of background on that. Anybody know who Don McGahn is? Don McGahn was President Trump's first White House counsel and has continued to represent President Trump on this. Before he was President Trump's White House counsel, he was this Oklahoma Republican Party's attorney between 2012 and 2015. And what he did for this Oklahoma Republican Party was work on an FEC audit for us. It came out pretty darn well. I worked with him very closely on that. We had great results. The one thing Don McGahn told me is you cannot talk about what's going on. Now, I know there's others that might say I need to talk about what may or may not be going on currently with the FEC, but I'm going to buy into what Don McGahn told me at that, and I'm going to say we're continuing to work on it. That's all I can tell you. Sorry.
Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. Please subscribe to us on patreon.com/Mick Meow. I want to make a correction. Kevin Farmer is the county chair of Creek County, not Craig County. I apologize for that. Creek County. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the FEC audit, and I know that you're not, the state chair, but Sooner Politics in November of 2021 reported that this is a second FEC audit that is being conducted, and it's just a little over 5 years from the last time that there was a similar audit done for the Oklahoma County, for the Oklahoma State GOP, forgive me. And that cost 6 figures in a sum to go for fines, assessments, and associated expenses. They also reported that the current audit focuses on a time when chairs, and that was Pam Pollard, I don't know how much of it, but she was chair between 2015 to 2019, and Dave McClain, 2019 to 2021, were chairmen. And then non-doc.com reported in February of 2022 that the administration has now paid over $14,000 in fines to the FEC and IRS for reporting and filing violations that occurred during the previous administrations. Now, Chairman Ferrati declined to discuss that. He declined to discuss the FEC audit and give a report. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, as far as I am concerned, one of the reasons we have a state party headquarters in place, and these people being paid to take care of this sort of thing, is to prevent just this from happening. People are giving their hard-earned money to the state party. People are, we had, what was that Minuteman program, yes. And people were being encouraged to put some skin in the game and to make their donations. These are hardworking people, and this money should be going to build up the party, get Republicans elected, push forward our agenda as a party. There is no excuse for thousands of dollars. We're getting the snot fined out of us because somebody dropped the ball. Now, when you look, because you can look up, you can look up yourself and see late filings that were made, and you're like, what? All you had was $600 some in expenses? What are you talking about? How are you keeping the lights paid? Yes. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. I can understand that while an audit is going on, that maybe you've got to keep your mouth shut about things. However, at the end of that process, we are owed an explanation. We need an explanation, good, bad, or ugly. What's going on with our money? It's our money.
Thank you. Do you think that was the right thing to do, to not address it?
Well, like I said, if there is an audit currently in progress, I'm not sure what the legality is on that. And it could be a thing of where, they do need to show a lot of discretion with what they say publicly until that is concluded. I don't know, to be honest.
Gotcha.
But all I am saying is this cannot be swept under the rug. Who was supposed to be doing the accounting? Who was supposed to be doing the books? Who's supposed to be turning in these reports? Why weren't they getting turned in?
Yeah.
And what, again, is the same thing we have with the proxy situation. What can we put in place so that moving forward, this never happens again?
Yes.
Because when we can't even have an election with fewer than 300 people, without the numbers adding up, we look like a bunch of buffoons. And then when we've got all of these financial problems here that just look like they involve negligence or carelessness. That's what it looks like.
Yes.
When that's going on, again, we look like we don't know what we're doing. And so this has got to be fixed. This has got to be fixed. We got a few things that just need to be fixed.
Yes.
That's all there is to it.
Absolutely, wholeheartedly agree. I do want to touch on one thing. As county chairman, I just want to see if you have any insight to what I consider possible questionable behavior. So there has been, by our chairman, denying that there was any kind of election fraud in 2020. Or he just didn't want people to discuss it because he said that impacted the Georgia race, so we shouldn't have talked about it. He also likened himself to a nun with a ruler. He then, when people called him out on it, he deleted their posts. He blocked them off the Oklahoma Republican Facebook pages for disagreeing with them. I get it. He, was maybe in the heat of the moment, but he's yelling at people to shut up and sit down. And then he apologizes for it later. However you want to interpret that. I'm just kind of questioning some of that.
Well, for some people, the outburst that you saw, they have already told me they're done with him. That's enough. They will not vote for him again. That's their decision.
Yes.
That's their decision. But by the same token, what happened, look, 2,000 Mules came out. That presented dispositive evidence of voter fraud. You can't deny it.
Yes.
You can't deny it. There is no way to get around it. They have done their homework. There's no way to get around it.
Yes.
For him to deny that himself, what, you're going to tell people they shouldn't talk about it? People need to talk about it.
Right.
People need to talk about it.
Yes.
And because something terrible happened, some people need to talk about it. Once again, sunlight is the best disinfectant. They'll say, oh, well, the courts have ruled. No, they didn't. The courts wouldn't take the case. They said people didn't have standing to look into it. That's not the same thing as you looked at the evidence and came up with a ruling.
Yeah.
Just while we're still on that subject, when we're talking about 2,000 Mules, when that came up, they said, oh, well, they didn't, the True the Vote people, they didn't have video of the same mules at different locations. Well, in the first place, yes, they did. They did come up with some of that, at least. But the other thing was simply this. They had the phone records, but not the video. Well, that's because, contrary to the law, they didn't have video cameras at a lot of these places. The law said they were supposed to. They didn't. How's come?
Yeah.
We have a right to ask questions, and as Republicans, we should be asking those questions. So my feelings are about this, you don't control people by telling them to shut up. You don't control people by deleting their posts. Full disclosure, I'm not on social media. I don't do Facebook. I don't do Twitter. So, that's just kind of, whatever. As far as the comment about being a nun with a ruler, I don't even know. I saw that. That could be interpreted different ways. But if it is true that he is deleting comments from Facebook that, that are critical of him or what have you, we're not children. It doesn't work that way, and, you're going to do much more harm than good by trying to shut people up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming in and
Thank
for
you.
talking to us. I hope that as the committee goes forward that you would come back and give us insight as much as you can. We want people to know, we want them to be educated, we want them to have transparency so that maybe we can have a better trust moving forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for having me.
Have a blessed day.
Thank you.
My city get crazy like Babylon. Can't be the good.
Thank you for curling up with us today. I am so grateful that you watched my show, and I am so blessed by all of you. I am also truly grateful for our guest, Troy Fullerton, who is the chair of Garvin County, for coming on with us today and talking to us. I am hoping that you all were inspired to go out, let your voices be heard, and get involved, and that you gained a lot of insight into what is going on in our Oklahoma GOP party. So, I want to make sure that you all subscribe to me on patreon.com/McMeow. You can also find the Conservative Continuum on Facebook and on Rebel. McMeow is on Truth Social, Telegram, and Substack. Now, join us next week when we speak to Sheriff Damon Devereaux, and he is the sheriff of Logan County. He is going to be talking to us about his role as sheriff in election integrity, protection of our constitutional rights, and the protection of Oklahomans by law enforcement. Now, don't forget, stand up, speak out, get involved, and be blessed always, my friends.